Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, this past week really has been a hard one for hardcore fans of Israel. So, we have had an attack on the one Roman Catholic church in Gaza. We have had an American citizen visiting his relatives in the West Bank get beaten to death by Israeli settlers, and particularly nasty beating to death because all the evidence suggests that his life could have been saved if they had allowed paramedics to come to the scene. Then we had a fire, a Christian church set on fire in the West Bank. Um, we also had Israel attack an American client, which is the Jolani government in Damascus, which we don't need to shed any tears for them. So we leave aside the regular killing of women and children, children trying to get food, water. This is daily horrific kind of murders. But these are things that hit Americans, American supporters of Israel. You can't really have Christian churches being burnt and attacked and people dying as they did in the church in Gaza. And to top it off, Israel is apparently making it harder for evangelical Christians in the United States to get visas to visit Israel. One assumes that they're
to to visit the Holy Land.
to visit the Holy Land. One assumes that that has to be because Israel isn't happy with the kind of reports that they might come back home with, and that's going to have an impact on the people back in the United States. So Mike Huckabee, a fervent, fanatical Christian Zionist, had to say something. And he did indeed. And so we want to go through what he said. But before that, Trump himself was a little unhappy about that attack on the Roman Catholic Church in Gaza and said he had spoken to Netanyahu about this and said Netanyahu will be issuing a statement shortly. And indeed, Netanyahu issued a statement. So let's just first take a look at what Netanyahu said in response to this deaths inside this Roman Catholic Church in Gaza. And here, this is the Caroline Levitt, who said that President Donald Trump, okay, yeah, said President Donald Trump spoke with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday morning to address Israel's strike that hit the only Catholic church in Gaza. I understand the Prime Minister agreed to put out a statement, she said. It was a mistake by the Israelis to hit that Catholic church. That's what the Prime Minister relayed to the President. It was a mistake. It's just, these things happen. I mean, you dial a number and you make a mistake when you dial a number. And then Netanyahu did indeed issue a statement. That's the statement. Israel deeply regrets that a stray ammunition hit Gaza's Holy Family Church. Every innocent life lost is a tragedy. We share the grief of the families and the faithful. That's it. That's the statement. And then he also said,
Well, that was a pretty big stray.
it's right. Like, these things happen. I mean, just a stray bullet. A lot of stray bullets around these days.
Yeah, well, that's the most moral army in the world. Okay.
The most moral army in the world. And then he also issued a statement addressing the Pope. We are grateful to Pope Leo for his words of comfort. Israel is investigating the incident and remains committed to protecting civilians and holy sites, which is very interesting. He says they're investigating the incident, but he already says it was a stray ammunition. So you've already,
And it was a mistake,
and it
you
was a
know.
mistake. So it doesn't sound like you're doing a lot of investigating, and you've already drawn the conclusion.
Well, also, I mean, Netanyahu is not known for being short-winded, but he's remarkably short-winded here.
That's right. Um, so that was that. Now, there's also the issue, of course, as I mentioned, of this American citizen getting beaten to death by West Bank settlers. And like, keep in mind, Huckabee is actually a big fan of the settlements. He's like,
He doesn't call it he doesn't call it the West Bank. He doesn't
no,
call
no,
it
no, no, no,
occupied territory.
no,
These are
no.
communities.
That's right, exactly. And so here is a statement by this is the first statement this is the one that he issued after his visit to the West Bank to see this church that was burned down, which is not, I mean, after all, Huckabee is a pastor, so a pastor can't be very happy to see a church getting burned down. Of course, these are mistakes. And he says here, one thing that we strongly agree on is that any desecration to a holy place, doesn't matter whether it's a church, a mosque, or a synagogue, it's unacceptable. To commit an act of sacrilege by desecrating a place that is supposed to be a place of worship, it is an act of terror and it is a crime.
These are very strong words for this guy, everyone.
They are strong words. But again, it's the church. If you hit a church, then he gets upset. You can kill children. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that doesn't disturb him too much. You hit a church, he gets upset. Same with Rubio. Rubio kind of got upset. Well, hey, you can't start hitting churches. And it is a crime. There should be consequences, and it should be harsh consequences, because it is one of the last bastions of our civilization, the places where we worship. And then he goes on, I myself am a Christian, but I would never desecrate a mosque or a synagogue. Those who would worship in a synagogue should never desecrate a church or a mosque, and those who worship in a mosque should never desecrate a church or a synagogue. It's that simple. And what has happened here is an absolute travesty, and it's my desire to do everything possible to let the people of this peaceful village know, oh, it's a peaceful village. Up until then, we thought this was just a hotbed of Hamas or, terrorists. It's a peaceful village. To let the people of this peaceful village know that we will certainly insist that those who carry out acts of terror and violence in Taipei or anywhere be found and be prosecuted. Not just reprimanded. That's not enough.
Well, why do you think he says that, George? Because that's the strongest Israel has ever applied to individuals involved in such events, a
Exactly.
reprimand. Yeah,
Exactly. That's why he said it.
that's right.
Exactly. Not just reprimanded. I know that's your temptation. That's the way you're going to go. That's not going to be acceptable to us. Um, People need to pay a price for doing something that destroys that which belongs not just to other people, but that which belongs to God. That is sacrilege. It is against the holy. Passionately written, very well, very well articulated.
Yeah, very biased in one direction. We all know that, for all I understand now, that there is not one functioning mosque in Gaza at all now. Okay, as
Right,
far as I understand. Okay,
right.
um, places of worship have not been spared.
No,
Okay.
no. But of course, the hostility towards Christians and Christianity is always ignored. No one ever addresses that.
Yeah,
That
well, hey,
within
George, one
Israel.
of the reasons why I always am very standoffish, to say the least, being brought up nominally as a Catholic, and when I visited Israel, being a Catholic is I got spat on. Okay,
Right.
so I mean,
Yeah.
in Bethlehem.
Right.
Okay, so,
Yeah. There's lots and lots of footage on YouTube. Precisely, people spit on it. There's some Christians, some nuns standing there collecting funds. Along come these Orthodox Jews, and they just spit on them, literally just spit on them. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I do.
Um, but that's almost never covered. And then he says, I have a lot of our staff from the embassy who are with me today, and we come to express solidarity with the people who just want to live their lives in peace, be able to go to their own land, be able to go to their place of worship. This is a Christian community largely, and it's one that deserves respect and deserves to be treated with dignity, nothing short.
Well, it's interesting. He says, be able to go to their land. Well, Mike, we got some problems here. Okay.
Right.
I mean, I thought God gave it to the Jews. Okay. So
Indeed.
what role, what place do these religious minorities have?
Right.
Okay. Um, you know, this is the first time that he really gives recognition to them.
Right.
As George has already pointed out, this is for decades. This blind eye to this,
Right.
blind eye.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Um, and of course, it's another thing that's rarely commented upon, but the fact that there is a substantial Christian minority in Palestine. It's very rarely, very rarely said, hey, you know why there's a Christian minority? Because that was the Holy Land. That's the birth of
That
Christianity. That's why there's a Christian minority there.
the original Christians.
Yes. Yes, right. Um, so, so then um, he issues a couple of tweets, and he says, "I work for all American citizens who live in Israel, Jewish, Muslim, or Christian. When they are terrorized or victims of crime, I will demand those responsible be held accountable with real consequences. Was in Taipei today to meet with people of that village and to listen and learn. Taipei is a quiet Palestinian Christian village south of Jerusalem with a lot of American citizens that has been vandalized, including fires set at ancient church. I visited there today. Desecrating a church, mosque, or synagogue is a crime against humanity and God." Now, notice throughout all these statements and tweets, he hasn't identified the perpetrators who did this, and why do they enjoy this impunity? How does that happen? That they
Yeah, the
do this,
church just was attacked.
right?
It was just attacked.
It was just attacked. And he for one isn't going to tolerate it, just an attack. It was an attack. And then this is his complaint about these visas.
No, that's yeah.
So he's right here.
Yep. Yep. As Dostoevsky would say, there's the crime, and now here's the punishment.
That's right. He says, look, the visas. You're not issuing visas to people who are supposedly your great friends. These are the Christian churches in the United States. They want to come and visit the Holy Land, and they're having difficulties getting visas.
And I can tell you, okay, I went there I didn't go on a pilgrimage or anything like that. No, I wanted to see Jerusalem. I had the opportunity. I had some spare change in my pocket, and I wanted to go and see and to visit some non-Israeli friends that were visiting at the same time. And it's amazing to behold because particularly Americans being able to go to Bethlehem, being able to go to Jerusalem. I think they even call it the Jerusalem complex, where people they go into rapturous
Right,
religious feeling. I mean, this is a really big deal
right,
for some, particularly evangelicals.
right,
I mean, it's a sight to behold.
right,
Okay.
right,
I mean, I can't believe that Jesus walked on
right,
this hill. Okay, you get this all of the time. So, I mean, Huckabee is speaking to a real
right,
constituency
right,
here, and a very committed one at that.
right. That's right. That's exactly right. So he writes to the Minister of Interior, who is an Orthodox Jew, and who is resigning from the government because he's not happy with these Orthodox Jews being conscripted. They're the most belligerent people in Israel, but they don't serve in the military.
Well, it's interesting is they're very belligerent when it comes to Palestinians living in the West Bank. They are amazingly belligerent
Right.
and violent.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, but they don't want to serve in the military. It's amazing that they've got away with it all these years. Because I mean, after all, other Israelis aren't exactly very happy. Why do I get to serve, but he doesn't? So, uh, but he's leaving the government.
And a lot of these Orthodox communities, they exist solely on the government.
Yeah,
I mean, these are not people. I don't want to make a huge generalization here. A lot of these families, the man in the family studies the Torah.
right.
Okay, that's his job. He gets a government subsidy to study the Torah. That's their business. That's
That's
whatever. Okay, but they they
right,
this is supposed to be land that was given to the Jews, but you're not going to defend it.
right,
Okay,
right.
I mean the contradictions abound. Keep going.
Exactly, exactly. So here's the letter from Huckabee. It is with great distress that I write to you my profound disappointment that the meeting held in your office has not resulted in what I hoped to be a simple resolution of the issue of routine granting of visas for Christian organizations and workers, as has been practiced for decades. I left the meeting with a very positive feeling that we had resolved the issue that necessitated that meeting. It had appeared that a staffing change in the Ministry of Interior resulted in an employee changing the long practiced process of granting visas to Christian organization, a list of which is enclosed. The situation has actually gotten worse.
Of course.
What a shock.
Oh, but it's absolutely intentional. Keep
Right.
going. We'll talk about it.
Exactly. Um, and then, as of the beginning of 2025, the Visa Department arbitrarily ceased honoring the recommendations of the Ministry of Religious Affairs and has initiated an independent investigation into each of the evangelical organizations to ascertain whether or not they should be recognized as religious institutions and continue receiving visas.
Okay, so now the Israelis get to determine the religiosity of
Right,
organizations in
exactly.
foreign countries.
That's
Okay.
right. So, do we count them as religious institutions? That's a little bit much. Thinking that somehow it's up to the Israeli government to decide whether this religious, or which is a Christian, it's a Christian religious organization, that this is a legitimate religious institution. But of course, Israel is mainly preoccupied with bad publicity. They're going to be absolutely determined to keep out anyone who might have negative things to say when he comes back.
Well, yeah, and this is my own personal opinion, but I mean, if you really truly believe in the gospel and believe that the downtrodden should be protected. I mean, this is the entire message of Christianity, okay? And then you'll see what's going on in the West Bank. And for me, again, my own personal opinion, if you do adhere to the gospel, the victims are easy to identify, and you should, because of your belief in the gospels, side with one of them. And this is what the Israelis hate.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, if even Huckabee
If
has problems, can you imagine what other Christian organizations in the U.S. Might find? And it says this includes many historic organizations such as the Baptist Convention of Israel, Christian Missionary Alliance, Assemblies of God, etc., some of whom have been active here since before 1948. The vast majority of them have headquarters in the United States. They have all been required to fill out extensive questionnaires regarding their religious beliefs, their activities, their assets in Israel, etc. And to the best of my knowledge, none of them have received new A3 clergy visas since the beginning of the year, as they are all under investigation.
Mike Huckabee No exceptions made.
No,
It
no, yeah, no, no,
took you
no.
this long to figure it out.
As a solution, we simply requested that the visa department return to the status quo and recognize the recommendations of the Ministry of Religious Affairs, its own department. Well, but that solution was not acceptable as a solution. And then there are a handful of Protestant evangelical educational institutions active in Israel, such as the Anglican School under the Israel Trust of the Anglican Church, IBEX or Masters University, and so on. And because they are all affiliated with churches, I thought that sometimes goes. Anyway, the close partnership between the United States and Israel governments is at an all-time high, having just concluded a joint military operation that will hopefully curtail the threat from an Iranian nuclear ambition. So this is the point.
I mean, what do I get out of this? What are we getting out? That's what he's saying,
That's
Hey,
exactly.
we ponied up. We ponied up.
That's right. Exactly.
Huh, where's the payback here?
But of course, that's the point with Israel. You never get the payback.
No,
And the people who
no.
expect some kind of a payback, I mean, they're always disappointed. There is never a payback. It's always just one-way traffic, and they still go on repeating our greatest ally in the world, our greatest friend and ally in the world, this great friend ally, which never does anything
Yep.
for
If you're
anyone.
on fire, they won't even piss on you.
No,
Okay.
never, absolutely not. For our formal and cordial official requests from U.S. Embassy Jerusalem to return to the status quo of long-standing practices regarding visas to be rebuffed and made worse is shocking and a source of inexplicable disappointment.
Well, and also, maybe this is so trivial it shouldn't even be mentioned here. Request from the U.S. Embassy, Jerusalem. We moved the embassy, you guys.
Exactly. We moved it.
And it inexplicable. Mike Huckabee is not a dummy.
No,
Okay.
no,
It inexplicable,
exactly.
really?
Exactly. Exactly. Let me reiterate that we are not asking for special or out of the ordinary treatment. We are simply requesting that the long-standing policy that has been employed for generations be continued. It is the abrupt change and additional burden and expense that has been imposed without explanation that we find bewildering. It's not terribly bewildering, and there's a good reason why there's no explanation. It's like the United States and evangelical Christian organizations are your friends, and so we feel we are being.
I mean, you're in a sad place when you have to say that. But I thought we were
I
friends.
thought we were friends. We feel we are being treated as adversaries.
But I want to be fair here. Mike Huckabee is one of these dyed in the wool evangelical Christians. I mean, everyone, for better or worse, he's the real thing. He is the real thing. And, you know, why I say I think we need to be fair here is that he's looking out for the interests of Christians,
Yes.
American Christians. Okay. I mean, it's up to each individual to decide how cynical he is. Okay, that's fine. But I think in to be fair, he really is a evangelical. He's the real thing. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the things I think may be cynical, like when he starts, getting emotional about an American citizen getting beaten to death. You think, come on, there've been Americans killed by Israel over the years, so that's more. Hey, I've got to do something about public relations
Yeah,
in
but
the United
but
States.
in the latest case, which I know you'll get to, I would agree the cynicism is apparent because he was a Palestinian
Yes,
after.
right. He was. Yeah, that's right.
He's
That's
a
right.
Palestinian,
That's right.
not an American, which of course is just insanely stupid. He
Right.
had American citizenship. It doesn't matter his creed. Okay, sorry.
Exactly. And there've been plenty of not just American, Jewish Americans who have been killed in Israel, and basically the U.S. government looked the other way. But the problems are clearly multiplying. It's what we talked about with Professor Mamdani. I keep saying I'm always saying Mamdani now. um, Got it. What?
Morandi,
Morandi,
right?
exactly. Yeah, that, it seems always that I get those the two names. I mean, I never used to do this, but now with Mamdani, it's Morandi, Professor Morandi, the other day, which is this bad publicity keeps keeps accumulating. This is something new,
Well,
and
and
then
particularly,
because now it's even Huckabee can't ignore it. I mean, there's also Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz who's now at One America, and he's now being very harsh,
yep.
speaking about what Israel's doing and what the settlers are doing, and he's somebody who actually refers to it as Judea and Samaria. So this is not somebody who's who is anti-Israel.
And again, this is a constituency that is hyper interested and aware of what's going on. And for Huckabee, he believes this is a cardinal mistake on the part of Israel because this is part of the fabric of the so-called inseparable friends. But when you go there, I just, you've never been, okay, but just go there. And I can tell you after a day, you'll understand instantly what the score is.
Right,
I mean, it's so
right,
patently
right.
obvious.
Exactly, exactly. Um, And so he says here that as the U.S. ambassador representing the United States and President Trump, I am formally requesting that this deteriorated relationship with the Interior Ministry be resolved so that the issue is not further escalated.
I don't think he ever imagined in his life that he would write the words deteriorated
Yes,
relationship.
exactly.
That is that's really antithetical to his
That's right. That's right. But I think that what you said is key. That on this he's absolutely this isn't cynical. This is he feels very strongly about this. He's an evangelical Christian. He's a fervent Christian Zionist. So when he says that, hey, you're making life difficult, and they're complaining to me that we're not able to get visas, I think he does. This is something he really genuinely feels strongly about. And that he says it would be very unfortunate that
well,
our
this is his best Tony soprano coming out. Go ahead.
So it would be very unfortunate that our embassy would have to publicly announce throughout the United States and the state of Israel throughout the United States that the state of Israel is no longer welcoming Christian organizations and their representatives, and is instead engaging in harassment and negative treatment toward organizations with long-standing relationships and positive involvement towards Zionism and friendship to the Jewish people in the state of Israel. It will be unfortunate.
Yeah.
We would
Yeah.
further be obligated to warn Christians in America that their generous contributions to any organizations to promote goodwill in Israel are being met with hostility, and that tourists should reconsider travel until this situation is resolved with clarity.
Well,
And
not me.
finally, and most regrettably, this is the Tony Soprano. Finally, and most regrettably, if the government of Israel continues to cause the expense and bureaucratic harassment for the granting of routine visas that for decades have been routine, I will have no other choice than to instruct our consular section to review options for reciprocal treatment of Israeli citizens seeking visas to the United States. Surely this is not the relationship the state of Israel wishes to have with its best partner and friend on the planet. So we're going to reciprocal treatment. You keep this up
Yep.
and forget about Israelis coming to
Yeah.
the United States.
Nice little country got here. Be a pity if something happened to it.
Exactly. So that was the letter. Then you got the response from the Minister of Interior. I write to you in the final days of my tenure as Minister of the Interior in response to your letter concerning the handling of visa applications for evangelical organizations or workers, in which you claim that the conduct in this matter contradicts the understandings reached between us.
Or it doesn't sound promising.
That's what you claim. I don't particularly
It
like
doesn't
claim.
sound
Right.
promising. It's like, when you're applying for university and you see that first line and you don't need to read the rest of it.
That's right. To the best of my knowledge, And following a re-examination conducted in coordination with, Tony whatever, who acts on your behalf, every request that was personally brought to the attention of my office has been addressed within an exceptionally short time frame. I issued the same directives regarding the cases mentioned in your letter, cases that had not previously been brought to my attention. Given the direct line of communication between my staff and your representatives, and in light of the fact that every request received by my office has thus far been handled promptly, I was particularly surprised by the manner in which your concerns were raised. I don't care for your manners.
The
And
tone is wrong. It's the tone is wrong.
That's right. It's like if anyone remembers that line in The Big Sleep. I don't care for your manners, Marlowe. So I don't care for your manners. I was particularly surprised by the manner in which your concerns were raised and by your decision to address your letter to a wide range of senior officials without first approaching me or my office directly. In my view, this course of action deviates from accepted working norms and does not reflect the direct and constructive relationship we have established.
So, keep in mind, Muck, who's alpha here? Who's the alpha dog? Okay.
Well, yes, it is. But what's interesting, all this time, Huckabee has been defending fervently Israel. I mean, he's an absolute defender. Since October the 7th, you can't say anything negative. And now suddenly he is unhappy. And the Israeli Minister of Interior, who is about to leave, he's unhappy with Huckabee's unhappiness. And then the relationship between the United States and the State of Israel is among the most valued and significant partnerships. Is among the most valued. Are there other valued and significant? Because it's among the most, as if there are three or four of these.
Yeah, get in line, Mike.
That's right. Among the most valued. That's much more fulsome. Huckabee is much more fulsome in his commendations of Israel than he is about the United States. I greatly appreciate your consistent support for Israel. Oh, you appreciated it, and your steadfast commitment to our partnership. For this reason, I believe it is incumbent upon us to act in a spirit of coordination, mutual trust, and respect, even when misunderstandings or difficulties.
So nothing was resolved.
Nothing was resolved. Nothing was resolved. Oh,
There were no particulars, no particulars,
none,
nothing.
none. Because I have to say, I doubt very much whether Huckabee would have written such a letter if this wasn't a real problem. A number of organizations were unable to get visas. So here we have, to give you a sense, to give you a sense of how fervent Huckabee is about Israel. Here is the tweet that he sent out in response to Ireland. So they're about to pass legislation not to do any business with settlers on the West Bank. And this is how Huckabee responded. Did the Irish fall into a vat of Guinness and propose something so stupid that it would be attributed to act of diplomatic intoxication? It will harm Arabs as much as Israelis. Sober up, Ireland. Call the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs and say you're sorry.
So Mike Huckabee is Israel's lawyer.
That's right. Notice how he's ready to. This is pretty insulting to the Irish. I mean, because everyone knows about how the Irish love Guinness. So the Irish, he's basically makes a sweeping. He doesn't. It's not narrowly focused on particular Irish politicians. The Irish fell into a vat of Guinness because that's what the Irish do, and proposed something, blah blah, and then diplomatic intoxication, because intoxication is what the Irish are prone to get themselves into. And so sober up, as you would tell the Irish, and call somebody and say you're
Yeah,
sorry.
but Huckabee would never, for a moment, accept the same level of generalization about Israelis,
Of course he wouldn't.
in a negative way, at least.
That's right. And this is because Ireland is set to pass a law criminalizing the import of goods from Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And it says a move that could increase anti-Semitism and harm Jewish communities. Yeah, of course,
How could a move that could increase anti-Semitism? Well, I don't.
I don't
Can you
get it
explain
either
that?
because I mean at most you could say a move that could increase anti-Irish feeling, but I don't get the why would increase anti-Semitism. I don't. Um, but this is but that's who Huckabee is, and that's why you have to wonder whether how much any of this can be taken seriously. Because this is July the 16th, so it's not like, oh, well, he wrote this a year ago or whatever, and he's changed his views. This is just the other day. And here is an article from Axios from today. Quote, he's a madman. Trump's team frets about Netanyahu after Syria strikes. Again, you notice it's this attack on Syria that's upsetting them. You know, you kill children in Gaza. Who cares? But you attack Syria after we're now saying he's our friend and partner. He's now become an American client, and he's a madman. Um, and now the reason this is kind of interesting is you have to then ask, is this any different from the Biden days? Because do you remember Biden? We also had all these stories about that raging anger. You know, Biden is absolutely furious with Netanyahu. Absolute Blinken's had it. He's had it with Bibi. But it never really amounts to anything. And then he goes on, a smoke and debris swirled over the Syrian presidential palace. The chatter in the West Wing grew louder. Benjamin Netanyahu is out of control. What they're saying, Bibi acted like a madman. He bombs everything all the time. One White House official told Axios, referring to Netanyahu by his nickname. This could undermine what Trump is trying to do. I guess it could. I mean, as long as we know what it is he's trying to do. I mean, once we know that, then we could figure out that it could undermine it. Um, 6 U.S. officials tell Axios that despite a U.S. brokered ceasefire that halted this week's escalation in Syria on Friday, this week ended with the White House significantly more alarmed about Netanyahu and his regional policies. However, Trump is
Alarmed, alarmed.
alarmed.
They're alarmed.
Yeah, they are alarmed.
Okay.
Alarm bells are going off.
Okay. What does being alarmed mean? Okay.
It's a
I
very
mean,
good. That's right. Yes. Um, and, you know, yeah, I don't know what alarm means, but it doesn't sound like it's going to result in any particular action. I mean,
no,
I'm
it's
just
kind of
alarmed.
like it's like, your breakfast is interrupted.
Right.
Is it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. What they bombed Beirut again. Oh, and they hit the presidential palace in
Right.
Damascus. Oh, this is alarming. Pass
Right.
the toast, George, and the
That's
butter.
right. Exactly. It is absolutely, yes, that's right. And then it says, however, Trump has so far refrained from public criticism, and it's unclear if he shares his advisor's frustrations. That's actually even worse than in the Biden, because
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Biden we were told he is really mad.
Well,
Biden.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know what Trump really thinks of Netanyahu, but he probably thinks this Bibi guy's got balls. Okay, I mean, it's a personality
Right.
type that
Right.
Trump would probably like or appreciate.
Right. Right. No, I think that's right. Um, and it is not totally clear whether he shares his advisor's recent concerns about Israel's actions in Syria. Well, that is interesting that all this time he hasn't said anything about what Israel is doing in Syria. And then it says the bombing in Syria caught the president and the White House by surprise.
Why? Well, okay, I'm surprised they were caught by
Right,
surprise.
I don't get the surprise either. Why would it be a surprise? Now, this is exactly what Israel does to its neighbors. It's like, Israel attacks Lebanon. Well, that caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that. A lot of other things, but I wasn't expecting that. The bombing of Lebanon.
Violating the ceasefire 4,000 times. Okay,
Oh,
well,
yeah,
that caught me
I
by
wasn't expecting
surprise.
that one. Um, the bombing in Syria caught him by surprise. The president doesn't like turning on the television and seeing bombs dropped in a country he's seeking peace, and made a monumental announcement to help rebuild. U.S. official said. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told Netanyahu and his team to stop on Wednesday. He stopped. They told him to stop on Wednesday, and he didn't stop. Well, that's a surprise. Netanyahu agreed to do so in return for the Syrian military withdrawing from Suwaida. And I think that's the big. This was hardly the first time Netanyahu tested Trump's patience. I love these.
I mean, this is kind of, I'm sorry, Axios, but this was like Middle East politics for dummies.
That's
Okay.
right, but it's also these cliches like tested Trump's patience. I mean, it's a line, famous line in the Marx Brothers. You're testing my patience. Oh, I don't mind. Why don't you come and test mine sometime? I mean, it's not. It doesn't mean anything. You're testing my patience. His gamble that Trump would ultimately back his strikes on Iran paid off in dramatic fashion. He's pressed on in Gaza for months, despite Trump's desire for an end to the war. In Syria, he bet once again that he could escalate dramatically without destabilizing the region or his relationship
That's
with Trump.
good. That's good 3 points. Yeah.
Of course it could. So that's the point. So that's why I don't think Trump really cares that much, with the exception of what we were talking about, which is that when you beat an American citizen to death, that does give you that bad headlines. That's not something that's not a good news item. And then you're bombing Christian churches, setting Christian churches on fire. That causes real headaches.
Yeah,
But
but it causes headaches, but it doesn't stop Israel.
no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. That's
That,
but
that- that's what that's what impunity means, everyone.
that's right.
Okay. Israel causes its patrons headaches all of the time.
Right.
All right.
That's
Mike
right.
Huckabee, like I said earlier, is there one standing mosque in Gaza? Well, the one Catholic church was hit very hard,
Right.
and you're getting the Pope involved. I mean,
Yes. Yeah. And then you have um, the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. He said, "Oh, this is unacceptable." They always use this language like it's unacceptable, but then they accept it. I mean, say, okay, it's unacceptable.
well,
Now,
it's
what are you
it's
going to
interesting.
do?
We got to have. There's kind of an axiom here. When we say it's unacceptable, it means we've accepted
We've
it.
accepted it. This is absolutely unacceptable. It's like this is intolerable, which means you've tolerated it. But the thing is that, and this is like just that ending of that Axios article is if Trump wanted to stop this, he could stop this, just like Biden could have stopped it if he wanted to. But they don't. And instead, there are all these people that come along and leak this. Well, this is really annoying. This is really, Bibi's gone too far. Bibi's out of control. But in fact, Bibi is very much in control. He knows
Well,
exactly what he's doing and he knows nothing's going to happen to him.
so much so, everyone. Um, Mike Huckabee serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States, at least officially, but he can be disposed of.
Of course, again.
It's intolerable his position here in
Right.
Israel, Mr. President. You have
Right.
to recall him. They'll
Yeah.
do it. They'll do it.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. But of course, it does raise an interesting question, I'm not sure what the answer is because before Trump assumed office, we kind of was thinking, okay, well, Trump isn't beholden to Israel or Zionist interests anymore. He's got one term. He's not going to run for re-election. He doesn't really need all this Adelson money and all this Zionist support. He now has a mandate really to pursue whatever he thinks is best for America. He's not looking for re-election the way other presidents have done, and yet he has done none of that. He has pursued identical policy to his predecessor.
Yeah, this is a recurring theme that George and I have discussed, and I basically kind of have a default position is that so many people in the American foreign policy establishment, and Congress is just basically a house of idiots. Okay, they're a pressure group. Okay, but I think for like the Marco Rubios and people like that, they cannot distinguish the difference between Israel and the United States in the Middle East because we're the good guys, the Arabs are the bad guys, okay? And who cares if they're Persian, they're Arab too. I mean, I think that's how they kind of look at the world. And so they see this confluence that we're so similar compared to the other people there that they cannot make a differentiation. Okay. And that's very, very dangerous because when you're the president of the United States, you're the one that takes the lumps for it. Okay. The very reason that we're doing this video. Okay. Because when you bomb a church, you kill an American, you destabilize a country where, at least nominally speaking, maybe not Trump, but his administration is that, what we did, maybe it's guilt. What we did to Syria was, ugh, we got to start fixing that. Okay. Who knows? And then again, that's just dashed. Okay. We told them to stop. They didn't stop.
Right.
It's regrettable. Okay. It's unacceptable. And that's why I think that's the real danger here because when we're told at least when Trump was being briefed on the bombing of Iran. I mean, it was as if there's no difference between Israel's interest and the United States' interests in bombing Iran. And I think Trump, okay, that's what you guys say. I mean, here's a guy that has no depth of knowledge about this, okay? He would probably prefer to talk about sprockets and metal graylings and stuff. He remember the early part of the administration, almost everything he talked about had to do with real estate somehow.
Right.
Okay, so that's what I find very troubling. Like Martin Indyk, he was U.S. ambassador to Israel, and he was exposed in giving highly classified information to the Israelis, and his reaction was, "But it's Israel."
Right. But Indyk had been a member of APAC. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's how his
But see,
career
that's
started.
what I'm saying,
Right,
George.
right.
They
But I
don't
think
see the
I
difference.
know all that is true, but this is why it's very baffling because this really wasn't the case. Wasn't the case like a generation or two ago when you absolutely had people within the U.S. foreign policy establishment that saw Arabs as allies. That allies.
Jonathan Pollard.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, that's right. But Arabs were allies. Look at Eisenhower, Kennedy. All the way. Nixon. All the people they say hate
Nixon.
that all of these Arabs. They hate the communists. They hate the Soviet Union. They're our natural allies, and this whole process. That's why they used to press Israel, well, not with any great success, but at least they used to press Israel to come to a settlement with the Arabs. I mean, it used to be the case, going all the way back to the 1950s. I say you got to deal with the refugee problem. You got to deal with this refugee problem. Then after 67, you've got to withdraw from these occupied territory. Over and over again, they would do it, and Israel would kind of fob them off. And yeah, we'll definitely get round to it. But that's because there were people within the foreign policy establishment who thought it important to keep in with the Arabs. Now, where we are now is just so extraordinary because it so manifestly doesn't serve any American interests.
It's very interesting. There's sometimes some excellent reporting coming out of responsible statecraft, not on Eastern Europe, not on Russia, with the exception of Ian Proud, which I think does a fantastic job. But there, you know, where are the Russianists in the last two administrations? They don't exist. Fiona Hill is not a Russianist, okay? Victoria Nuland is not a Russianist, okay? Where are the Arabists? I remember Alistair Crook, I think he was telling us, they've just been systematically pushed out to do agree with George here. I mean, people that actually know something about Jordan, okay, for example. And if you don't get a contrary message, then it just is very, very monolithic. And, we criticize Donald Trump here all the time. He can't know everything about everything everywhere at the same time. But he's really badly served. Okay. Who's this Barak guy, the American ambassador to Turkey? And
Yeah.
he's like making policy in Lebanon. I mean, what's going on here? Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right, and that's
Do
why
we do we say Turkey now or
I
not?
don't. I say
Okay.
Turkey.
Okay.
I don't go along with this thing. I mean,
I got
I
I,
actually, yeah, yeah. I actually refer to Bombay. I don't say Mumbai.
wow, George is a radical purist. Okay.
Exactly, and I'm not going to go with down there. So, but look,
Do you say Saigon still?
I say Saigon. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Hardcore.
I just know the only one that I've succumbed to is Beijing, but I'd still, if push came to shove, I could easily go back to Peking. I mean,
I like the sound of Beijing. That's
it's not
okay.
a bad sound. It's not a bad sound, but I still like Peking.
Okay. It's
It has a
okay.
historic resonance.
No pressure for me. Okay.
I don't know. I do think it's quite remarkable that Trump had an opportunity, and I think like as with Ukraine, he had an opportunity to come at this with fresh pair of eyes, and he hasn't done it. And
Oh, okay. Let's flip it, George, because I think it just goes down to a sensibility about hegemony. Because if you look at Ukraine, we look at Gaza, we look at Syria, what does that entail? That entails negotiation. Negotiation means, at least nominally speaking, everybody's got to give a little bit. Okay, you got to give a little bit, everybody. Okay, maybe we'll force one side to give a little bit more, but you have to. That's the seal of approval that there was a negotiated
yeah,
process. Particularly since 9/11, that is not part of the DNA of American foreign policy. Negotiation is appeasement. This is a negotiate, they've weaponized and politicized, criminalized negotiation. I think that's what's here.
right. I that but they've actually wholly taken a pro-Israel position, a so radical pro-Israel position that is clearly even contrary. I mean, you can say, oh, the Americans have always been pro-Israel, but at least in public, America had committed itself, well, initially to the resolution of the Palestinian refugee problem, and then after 1967, they were resolved that Israel needed to withdraw from the occupied territory in exchange for security. And then, this went on and on. This was always officially the U.S. position. And that isn't even the official U.S. position anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, Trump is just sort of, just I don't care. So that it's now the U.S. has essentially taken the Tel Aviv position. That's
That's
your
why I say they don't see see a difference, and there's a default to Tel Aviv.
yeah, right.
I've said this many times since October 7th, and I still stand by it. There is a coalition of forces in Israel, in Western Europe, in the United States, that this was the greatest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Okay, that's their jumping off point to solve all problems everywhere at the same time. And so, look, we're on a roll. I mean, Syria, boop, off. Hezbollah, boop, gone. Okay, and the Iranians are shaking in their boots. I mean, hey, we're on a roll here. What's wrong with you people? That's how they see it.
Right,
Okay,
right.
and there are plenty of people in Washington that go along with that. Okay,
Yep,
they're saying we're just this close to
right.
creating a greater Israel that will stand for a millennia or whatever.
No, I think that's probably the thinking within the upper echelons of the Trump administration, even though they can't really say it out loud. I guess the only fly in the ointment is precisely the things that we're talking about. Is that does there come a point when Israel becomes so hated, so toxic that any American president really just can no longer associate the United States with that. And we may be reaching that point. I mean, when you got Huckabee issuing statements, when you got Matt Gaetz talking about this violence, essentially Israel is just unleashing violence against unarmed civilians, you get more and more of this. It's going to be harder and harder just to put it all back together again. Our great friend and ally. People are coming to hate, really hate
Well,
this.
and particularly if you look at how particularly how Americans are exposed to Israelism, okay? Because this is what I think it is. It's Israelism. What is their foundational story that is given to Americans about Israel? They're just like us. We had to conquer the West. We had manifest destiny. We brought civilization. We brought Enlightenment values. The Israelis are doing the same thing in the Middle East. See, that's how you sell it. And it went a long, long way. And then you have people like Huckabee that bought into it totally, okay? But his one of his core values is his Christianity,
Yep.
and he can't square
Okay.
the circle here
Right.
because as cynical as he is, and as we've mentioned here, he's not going to betray how he understands his evangelical
Yes.
Christianity. And George is absolutely right. They're coming up against each other in such a hard way that that's good if people are going to say we can't go along with that because then you're not like us. We don't do that.
Right. No,
We did it. We did it. Okay. We have our foundational myths. Every society has myths about themselves. Okay.
right.
And the myth is that we don't go, when people are down, we don't starve them. We don't
Right.
do that. But Israel does do that. And we're attached at the hip to that. Is
Yep.
that what you want? More and more people say, I support Israel. Israel's our good friend.
I
But
can't go along with that. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that, and I think that is that is coming, and once Israel does arouse this kind of intense negative feeling, I'm not sure Israel can do anything to rectify it because even if they replace Netanyahu with someone else, first of all,
oh,
whoever they replace him with is going to be just as bad. But
just
it's
as bad.
the image of Israel is now so tarnished that it's not, you're not going to go back. You can't go back as to this wonderful time. Oh, the kibbutz. Oh, they grew oranges in the desert. Oh, look, these savages were here for thousands of years and they didn't grow anything. And now suddenly these settlers, these Jewish settlers came and they started growing oranges and lemons and grapefruit. That isn't going to work. That isn't working anymore. I said, no, you brought mass killing here. That's what you brought, and that I think could well be fatal, really fatal for Israel, because they're still dependent on the United States. It's still the United States is your big your money lender, your enabler. You
Your
lose that,
lawyer.
and you don't have anything.
And the Huckabee story is really important because Israel is highly reliant on tourism. I mean, I went there as a tourist, okay? It's not a cheap place to visit. It wasn't when I was there. I'm sure it's far worse now. I mean, this is conditions of war. But I mean, where do a lot of their tourists, who are they? They're Christians. They're
Right,
not, I mean, obviously a lot of Jews, but
right,
there are far more Christians in the world.
right.
And, going to the tomb of Christ, I mean, if you're even brought up nominally as a Christian, it's like, well, that's like, wow, that's a check on my bucket. Okay, I actually saw the place. That's gone down. That's dwindled. And now if you're going to be vetting your most valuable tourist source like that, that you don't need to advertise it. It's word of mouth, George. That goes around really fast.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I think you are in a lot of trouble when you're losing Huckabee. I mean, then that's
Yeah,
even
yeah.
even if you might get him back, a little while. But the fact that you get
Oh no, you'll get him
Huckabee,
back on other things.
yeah,
Okay. You'll
exactly.
get him back on other
Yeah,
things. Okay.
yeah.
But if he, I don't I've found him to be a clever American domestic politician, okay? When I heard that he had taken this post, I swallowed hard because I know what his views are on all of.
Right.
There are no, it's not occupied territory. They're communities,
Yes.
okay? There is no such thing as a Palestinian. They're Jordanians.
Right.
Okay. I mean, this is stuff this is all the foundational propaganda of the Israeli state. Mike, it's kind of evolved, okay? Because even the US government was involved in a two-state solution
Right.
with the Palestinian. Look, as George pointed out, I mean, like 80 years, just poof, it's gone.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, that's right. And then it's kind of interesting whether Trump would be willing, for the sake of Israel, to see his popularity start sinking. I mean, if you start losing support here because you're associated with this, that's a serious business. Given also all the other things that is damaging Trump's reputation. But for Israel, and suddenly your numbers are going through the toilet, and I think they will because this is. I mean, if your own supporters are getting disgusted by this, then you're heading for disaster.
George, did you see the interview? I'm loath to mention Piers Morgan again, but did you see his interview with the mother of the settlements? I don't remember her name. I've seen BBC did a documentary on
I,
her.
I didn't see it.
I,
No.
I I mean, Israeli Hasbra. I mean, you guys, you got to get your act together. This woman looked demonic.
Right.
I mean, demonic. And the clip that I saw, which was quite extensive, she cannot say the word Palestinian. They're Arabs and they're Jordanians. She cannot say Palestinian. Okay, when it was Palestine in time,
Was this
the
was this
Roman
the was
time.
this the widow of the
No, no, no. This is this woman that she's like the guiding spirit of the settler movement. Okay, and she has typical Israeli American English. Okay, it's you know what I mean. But
right,
I mean, can you remember when he said, "Can you condemn Hamas? Can you?" That was
right,
his mantra for months,
right,
right here. But can you condemn the killing of children? And he asked the question like 30 times,
right,
and she just kept smiling. She
right,
said, "You parents should not teach their children to hate Jews." She said
right.
that over and over and over again. But do you condemn the killing of children? Parents should not teach their
Right.
children to hate
But
Jews.
but you have to be honest. I mean, that's pretty much the response that you would get from that woman who is the State Department spokesperson,
Oh, Tammy Bruce.
Tammy
Oh
Bruce. Uh,
God. I
the
mean, you think it can never get
it can
worse.
never get worse.
What was her name? The girl that made history? Jean, okay, Jean-Pierre. What was her name?
Oh yeah, the is it yes, it is Jean-Pierre, but there was she had a first name as well. Yeah, but Jean-Pierre, yeah, yeah, but I can't remember the
I
first
am
name.
history.
That's I Am History. But Tammy Bruce was a very interesting one because she apparently there was that interview that she gave in
Oh yeah.
which she said she's really sorry that she's not Jewish. I mean that it actually grieves her that she isn't
And
Jewish.
her love for Israel is it's not next to America,
Oh,
meaning
that's
Israel first.
that's right. Yes. What was it? America is the greatest country on earth next to Israel. That's an official of the U.S. government. Israel is America is the greatest country on earth next to Israel.
Well, I mean, but see that tells us a lot because I think for the entire time George and I have been following politics, as young men, all the way to the present. It's implicitly implied that you can't be too Israel enough, okay? Because for decades and decades, there's no real downside of being pro-Israeli.
Right,
And Tammy Bruce, she's a numbskull. Let's put
right.
it. I mean,
Right,
God, without that binder, she couldn't tell you what the weather is
right,
outside.
right, right. No, I think
There's no downside for being pro-Israel, but that has been tested, rigorously
right,
for the last 2 years now.
right.
Okay,
No,
and so she's just erring on the side of caution. Everyone else has gotten away with it. I'll do the same.
right. That's right. Because the way you normally address this issue is that, well, I have two loves. I love Israel and I love the United States. And I just don't differentiate between the two. It's like, which do you prefer, steak or ice cream? I love both. She did something worse. She actually said she prefers Israel to the United States. And that's why it was such a shocking comment, because you kind of blurted out what everyone had always known. But people had always actually said this about Jews. They said, well, the dual loyalty. She said, she said, yeah, and I'm not even Jewish. I prefer Israel to the United States.
Well,
And she's a representative of the U.S. government. She's a
yeah, well, you would.
spokesperson for the U.S. government. That's why it was so shocking.
She's supposed to be a media expert. I mean, can you? I mean, that is the worst performance. I mean, like George said, I have two loves. That would have been fine.
Right.
Okay, but
Right.
I mean, she's completely inept. What's really interesting, you and I made a couple of videos about the right, the radical right in the West and their affinity with Israel. And Tammy Bruce, her official biography is that she comes from the left. Okay, well maybe she does. Maybe she comes from more like a Trotsky or kind of like Bolshevik left in her mindset. Because what is liked about Israel is its determination,
Right.
its fervor, its nationalism, my country right, no matter if it's wrong. I mean, this is. I mean, George and I have talked about the lineages of the right, and if we look at the 20th, in 19th and 20th century, anti-Semitism is abound. It's everywhere. Okay, but they made the transition. We can see this with Le Pen dynasty, where no, the Israelis are exhibiting characteristics we actually admire. It's completely devoid of Judaism, and it's actually devoid of Christianity as well. It's more of a formula of power, and that's the kind of nation state that they like, where everyone is marching together. Dissidents are pushed away, they're punished. It's for the good of the nation and all that. It's really interesting how, Israel is like a positive model for so many on the right, and I would even say some people on the left. But we shouldn't be surprised if people like Tammy Bruce says that. What is it that she loves about Israel so much? I would really like to know.
Well, it is very interesting because, of course, her background, and I'm not buying the thing that she was on the left. I mean, she, like many people, she sort of starts off being whatever, a feminist, and then she kind of finds, hey, I can be,
Make a
I can make
lot more money.
I can make a lot more money being on Fox News
Yeah,
and
being a lesbian on Fox News. That's
exactly.
cool.
And whenever she was on, and she was a regular on Sean Hannity, she would always say, "Well, as a gay woman and as a feminist, I blah 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 blah." And that was her calling card. That, well, who can argue against her because she's gay and she's a feminist, but and completely incomprehensible. If you remember, whenever she was on, and she was always on about once every 2 or 3 days on Hannity, they would always ask questions, and it was just incomprehensible. She'd just go off in a kind of a rant. So I never really thought that she had any particular
I
strong
mean, but
views on
what she would
anything.
do, she wouldn't answer any questions because I
Oh,
don't think she has anything to say. But she said, but that's what Democrats do. That's
that's
what
right, exactly. That's
liberals
it.
do. I mean, it's like,
That's what
okay,
Democrats.
that's not an answer.
No, no, no.
Okay.
That exactly. That's what Democrats do. That's what the left does, and that is characteristic of these kind of opportunists who say, "Well, I was on the left, and now So they always say there is something called the left that thinks this. They don't actually say who particularly think that's what the left thinks, and that's terrible. The left believes that boys should be playing in women's sports or something like the left thinks that. Oh, really? That's so that was her calling card. And then for some reason, and I don't know how she got this gig. and she just embraced it. You know, well, yeah, I'm going to
I think
embrace Israel. Why not? That's where the money is.
it's very much the Mark Levin trajectory. Now, I have no idea what Mark Levin's background is, and I don't care. Okay. However, in the 1980s, AM talk radio, and he was one of the pioneers of it. That's why Sean Hannity calls him the great one.
The
Yeah,
great one,
the great one. And Mark Levin, he broke into talk radio in a huge, huge way. I mean, I knew his voice for years before I even knew his name.
yeah, right.
Okay. And Sean Hannity did it. Tammy Bruce did it. A lot of people got on that bandwagon because, when, NPR is being defunded, thank God. Okay. But so much of the airwaves were saturated with NPR junk. Okay. And if you're Mark Levin, as a dissident voice, and, there are guys, most adult men in the United States, they're in transport. They work with cars. They work with delivery and stuff like that. And you're listening to that radio all the time. It became very, very lucrative, and a lot of people just clung on to it. And it is still it's very much part of the whole what would become the Trump movement. Okay, unfortunately, in my opinion, it was the Pat Buchanan movement that it was hijacked. Okay, where you can say America first means we should be bombing Iran. Pat Buchanan would never say such a thing.
No, and not only would he not say it, he actually got into a whole argument with Sean Hannity on
And the
that
last
very
time he
subject.
was on
He was
Fox,
never invited on the game, and that was that was a
that was a great interview. Oh
it was
man,
a
he
great interview. And what was strange about that interview was that Hannity was obviously not expecting this. And you have to be surprised why Hannity. I mean, you'd have thought Hannity would be well informed enough to say that is not Buchanan's view. I think he seemed genuinely surprised that Buchanan didn't think it was a great idea to bomb Iran. Yeah, and he was never on. So no, there's no question. There was something called an America First movement, and it has been hijacked. And so we're going to have to see whether America First will reassert itself. What genuinely, I mean, and there are people
Well,
who really do
what do you
genuinely
think,
believe it. I
George?
mean, I think Tucker Carlson, he is America First. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is genuinely America First,
And,
as
and
opposed to the others who really are, Israel First, or and even worse.
all right, you set up the question. Can you answer it?
Um, it may happen.
Okay, good. I'm with you. It may
It may
happen,
happen. We can't say
but
that.
I'm more and more. You know, I guess it makes me a naive person, George, because I keep falling for it.
Yeah. Well, I think people like Tucker and Marjorie Taylor are genuine. Now they are. I think they are genuine. I think they're genuinely America First. Whether they prevail, I mean that I don't know. I mean, whether they'll be able to build up, support. I mean, it was striking. Turning Point USA. There was this cheer, big roar when Tucker Carlson condemned Israel. And the fact that Charlie Kirk, he had him on, and Charlie Kirk, I think, was unhappy about that. But Charlie Kirk, he's a fervent supporter of Israel. But even he has to somehow appreciate that there are elements within that big youth thing that he runs that really detest that country.
Absolutely. And what makes it worse for Charlie Kirk is that these are supposed to be the best and the brightest of the upcoming generation. And I've come across this everywhere, talking to people that study MAGA, study the frictions within the movement, if it's really even a movement, if it's just a cult. But one thing that comes up all of the time, Israel is not a favored
No,
topic,
no, no.
okay, at all, okay, at all. And Charlie Kirk, maybe he regrets it now, but he had Dave Smith on. Now, Dave Smith is a comedian, okay? And I've actually finally looked at some of his stuff. He's genuinely a funny guy. I like it, okay? And he's a very, comedians tend to be intelligent people. It's highly correlated, highly correlated. And he was Charlie Kirk moderated, and Dave Smith was off some nutcase Zionist. I mean, so smug the way
Right.
it was, and the same old platitudes, and the crowd just wasn't having it.
Right.
And Dave Smith is not an expert on Israel, Palestine, or the Israel-Palestine conflict. He's a good, quick study, and he makes very, very obvious observations. But he's by no stretch of the imagination an expert, okay? And he rolled his opposition. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Right. No, that's right. And I think that's why it is becoming a real problem on the right. And when Marjorie Taylor Greene sends out these tweets and saying, "Hey, this is not what I
Nuclear
voted
armed
for. This is
Israel?
not what my constituents voted for." That counts. She's a very popular person. She's now becoming she's a rising star
Yes.
within the movement. Yeah, you gotta pay attention to that. You're not going to silence her. Mark Levin can rant and rave, but the point is that that is all fake. Mark Levin, that's all fakery. I mean, he has this big following on with this with the people who kind of love all this. He doesn't have any real weight
Mark
within
Levin, who voted for you?
exactly.
Okay, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
They
she
voted for it. Yeah,
if longevity would be the sole criterion for leadership, it's very possible Marjorie Taylor Greene could be Speaker of the House one day
right.
because she ain't going nowhere.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, there's so many pressure points right now, and I'll end on this because I know we'll do a separate video in the near future. Is Trump a strong leader? I mean, he's not.
No,
I just don't
no,
see it.
no.
I don't see it
I don't see it at all.
really
Yeah.
anywhere.
No.
Even when you say under your breath, amnesty.
Right. Right.
I mean,
That's
it's like, what?
that's right. Well, we'll discuss that in the next video.
All righty. All right, everyone. This is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Tomorrow at 10
AM
a.m.
Eastern
Eastern
time.
Time with an act of God. I'm in communication. We'll do a live stream. And then on Tuesday, George is
My
out and about on his own.
my solo 3 p.m. Eastern time, and then you got to think about the dogs because the dogs, they've had it. They're putting in all the work, and they're not getting any reward. They say, well, that's it. We're not going to do it anymore. So if you want to continue getting the input from these hounds, then grab whatever you've got in your wallet, everything in your bank account, transfer it directly to the dogs. That's the only thing they will accept. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we might get some cooperation from the dogs. They're not in a cooperative mood any longer. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.